Hello, got a few people starting to come in now. Welcome to this talk at SU20 Digital. I'm going to spend a few moments waiting for people to join us. And hopefully you've been able to see some of the other great content that's happened throughout the week. Lots of that will be available to replay because we've been able to record them. This session is also getting recorded for watch back later or to share with other people. As you might have done in other sessions, please introduce yourselves in the chat, in the webinar chat. Try and make sure it says all panelists and attendees, and then that way you all get to see who's here and who you are, and it's a networking opportunity. Otherwise, only me and Sarah get to see it. Hi, John. Throughout the session, there's a opportunity for you to submit questions for Sarah in the Q&A panel, in the Q&A box. Please do that and upvote any questions that look really particularly interesting. Sarah said she'll do her best to try and answer those. Right, brilliant. Those numbers are starting to steady out now, Sarah. So I think we've got most people here to start off. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah Ellis, CEO, Kiel Students Union, for this session. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this. I really appreciate it. It's very weird doing a webinar when I can't actually see your faces and I'm looking at my own face. So I'm just going to have to assume that you're laughing along with my rubbish jokes. Okay, so this session is on annual strategic planning. And it's based on research that I did a couple of years ago when I was doing my MBA. It's something that we're just about to start and launch into at Kiel SU. And then when everything has kind of happened over the last few months, this suddenly became a lot more relevant, which is great because that's always nice when you do some research and then things that are happening in the real world back it up. Really happy to answer your questions. I'll probably answer the majority at the end if that's okay, but do feel free to just pop questions in there as we go along. Okay, so the original MBA was looking at solving a problem of the challenge of aligning sabbatical officer aspirations with long-term strategy in students' unions, which is, it's a problem for everybody, isn't it? So you have this really long-term strategy and officers coming in each year wanting to do their own things and meet their own aims and objectives. So that was the original problem. So we have now started doing this at Kiel. But as I said before, we are now starting to see that it's solving other issues as well. So the MBA research, what it uncovered was actually, if you take the normal way of strategic planning, when we do this every sort of we release a new plan every 3 to 5 years, it's all glitter and unicorns. Every 3 years, we chuck glitter and unicorns at everyone. And we say, look at this new fancy thing, this is so good. And then after a year, it goes a bit quiet. After 2 years, it's even quieter. After 3 years, like, where even is that strategic plan? We've had new SABs coming in and things in the world have changed and it's just not relevant anymore. So it was a long-standing problem with no real solutions out there. What the research also looked at actually was the significance of people in the way that we deliver our strategic planning and the behaviours of those people. And actually, you know, why are we reinventing ourselves every 3 to 5 years? Do other organisations reinvent themselves every 3 to 5 years? Probably not. And actually, you could have a really good plan, you know, really well thought out, really clear, but the behaviour around the people delivering that plan and working in your organisation and around you actually isn't helping you to achieve anything, and which leads to a bad student experience. So students, when they come into our students' union, they want to know what kind of service that they're going to be getting, what kind of behaviours they should expect to be greeted with. Are they friendly? Is this a supportive environment? So that was one of the key things it looked at. It also looked at the speed and the reason for change as well. So funny enough, when I was in the middle of doing the dissertation, there was think it was Kylie Jenner, I want to say, put a tweet out about Snapchat being rubbish, basically. And overnight, that wiped 1.4 billion off the share value of Snapchat. And so it just shows you how quickly things can change. So if you've not got your finger on the pulse, then you're going to miss out. And obviously the true sabbatical year as well, it's not really a year, is it, as we talk about it. They start in July, they're in training for a month, 2 months, take a bit of leave over summer. Students coming in end of September, so they've got October, November, December, January, February, oh, it's elections again. And quite often you find that officers, when it gets past Easter, do start to wind down and potentially leave and get other jobs. So actually, it's not like when your officer starts on day one, you've got 365 days of really quick, intensive work. It's much shorter than that. So we need to make sure that we can adapt for that as well. But the key thing that came out of this, and which why you'll see in a moment the annual thing comes in, is who are we communicating to during all of this? So we tend to do research in, we'll sometimes take up to a year to do research, which is fine because you want to establish properly what you're doing. So you speak to your first years, your second years, your third years, your masters and your sabbatical officers. And then in year one of your strategic plan, you start delivering. But the third years have left that you asked. The first years that are there haven't been able to contribute. Your second years are now third years and their needs might have changed. You get into the second year of delivering your strategic plan, and the third years and the second years from the original research year have gone, and you're now only delivering that plan to the first years. I'm aware, obviously, there are other anomalies out there, PhD students, part-time students, but I am just trying to keep this centered for now. By the third year of delivering a strategic plan, who on earth are you delivering that plan to? Because they've gone. The massive percentage of students that you did that research with are no longer there. So even if you've somehow managed, and well done if you have, to keep going with that plan from day one and keep going with those aims and ticking it all off, actually not hardly any of the people that you researched with are there anymore. So what answer did this research come up with, and how now will that lead in to the position we're in? So actually what it did was it showed that it is the vision, the values and the behaviours of an organisation that should underpin what the organisation does. And your planning should be annual, because actually your plans do change in real life, your plans change. So by establishing a vision, values and behaviours, actually what you're doing is you're cementing there what a student can expect from your organisation when they walk in, just like they know what to expect when they walk into Lush or Apple or Disney World or kind of any, bigger organisation. They know exactly the kind of service that they'll be getting. And our planning underneath that is what is important. So if you do a bit of research every year, and I'll come on a bit later on into why it doesn't sound like as big a scary job as it is. But if you research every year, you've constantly got that up-to-date information. And so each year you're able to say the next new thing that's happening, rather than trying to guess what will happen in 3 years' time. So this is on your vision, mission and values at Keele. Now the wording of, don't worry about the wording of it. This is obviously just unique to us at Keele. So this was the culmination of probably, I've been at Keele about a year, so this is about 9 months worth of research. And it was research that was done with as many key stakeholders as we could. We did the research internally ourselves. Staff were really heavily involved in this, because staff are your continuity. So if your staff aren't buying in to your vision and your values and your behaviours, then your students are never going to buy in. So our staff played a really key part in that. We obviously did a lot of research with our students and around specifically behaviours. So we didn't ask them what kind of music do you want to see in the bar or the nightclub. We asked them about how they felt about the Students' Union, the behaviours that they'd like to see. And from that, we created this vision, values and behaviours. And really, this should last us for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It could last us 20 years if we decided that was the way that we wanted to go. And I think the reason for this is, why would you change your vision every 3 years? And I'm guilty of it from previous places I've been. We've written new strategic plans. We've changed our vision every 3 years. We've changed our values every 3 years. But why would you do that? Because the bigger successful charities and, you know, the RSPCA doesn't change their vision every 3 years. They know what they do. They know why they do it. So I think there's a question for us as SUs, why are we changing this so constantly? Your plans change, of course they do. Your strategic aims will change, your goals would change, but actually your vision of what you want to be as an organisation and the values that you live and breathe as that organisation probably would stay the same. Now, I think one of the easiest ways to kind of demonstrate this, and sorry, you know, iPhones, what have you, whether you, but I think it's quite a nice way to demonstrate. You know that all of those things are there on that screen are iPhones, because the way that they have kept their identity and what they believe in hasn't changed. The operating system behind them has changed. So kind of their plans, so if you like to speak about it, has changed. And the key thing why I'm showing you this is it is about an evolution of change and how we're delivering things. So if you upgraded from, let's say, an iPhone 5S to an iPhone 6, you'd be like, oh, it's nice. Camera's a little bit better. It's a bit faster. It's all right, that's fine. But if you upgraded from an iPhone 6S to an iPhone 11, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Look how incredible the camera is. Look how different this is. It's so fast and it never crashes. And I kind of think that's a little bit like the way we should be looking at our strategic plans. If you're doing them every year, you wouldn't expect there to be a lot of difference between year 1 and year 2, and year 2 and year 3, year 3 and year 4. But if you compared year 5 to year 1, you'd suddenly go, whoa, oh gosh, that's a huge change. Look how far we've come. Look at all the things that we've not included in the next plan because we've achieved it. And this is also the same, I think, if you want to take it back to people, I think it's very similar, like for us. Like, that's me when I was really small, and that's me when, you know, big up if there's anyone from UCLan Students Union on this, because that was me when I was starting my campaigning at UCLan Students Union when I was a student. But actually, you don't look in the mirror each morning. Oh, sometimes I do, but you don't tend to look in the mirror each morning and go, oh my God, is that me? Because you just kind of get used to how you are. And then you dig out a picture from 10 years ago and you go, wow, look at that change. And again, I think that is how we should be looking at strategy. So it's not a shock and it's not glitter and unicorns every 3 years and suddenly everyone's really tense about the new plan. Your plan is evolving with your organization. It is evolving with your students and the needs that they have. You know, you as a person, if I look at myself on just even on those images, which is kind of terrifying, but if I look at myself, me as a person, I'm kind of very similar to how I was then. My general values are probably the same. The sort of my personality isn't massively different. Yes, I've grown in confidence and things, but I'm not a completely different person. But my plans have changed, obviously. You know, your plans change in life, but you as a person don't necessarily have those massive changes all throughout your life. Now, linking this back in now, so kind of bringing the premise of the evolution and the annual side of stuff back in directly to our sabbatical officers and how we can actually implement this in a students' union. Sabbatical officers, if you do an annual plan, they can own that plan. Now, that the image on there is of Keel's plan from about 3 years ago. Tom Snape on there, wonderful sabbatical officer, really fantastic person. But 2 years on, my new union development officer, you know, there's someone in between him and Tom, doesn't necessarily want to pick up the strategic plan and deliver it necessarily because, well, he's had no involvement in it. So he doesn't own it, and you find that then you get to the point where Sabs are like, I don't have anything to do with this. Like, it's kind of meaningless to me. It's not even got my face on it, if that's the kind of thing that they are. So, and it's a very similar thing, you know, you wouldn't sell your house with the previous owner's clothes in there and pictures up on the wall. That'd be weird. And yet and again, I am guilty of this, we expect our officers to come in each year and be like, here's the plan, off you go. And what was the point in asking them what they wanted to do in the first place in their manifestos if that is the attitude that we're going to have? We need to make them feel valued as officers, and we need to make them know that they're included in our plans and they're part of it, or else we are doing them a disservice. So, you know, we are adding into our new annual strategic plan the key aims of our new sabbatical team. And that will then feed into our staff planning, and we'll be able to help them deliver that, rather than here's a static plan and I'm sure we can try and squeeze your stuff in and around it. It actually really makes sure that your officer plans are included. But going on now then directly to COVID, what does it mean? It's not only COVID either that can be a massive change. Yet, any situation could change your world really suddenly and mean that the current way of planning is obsolete. For all of us now, it's a pandemic, obviously. And that is planning, whether you're planning a holiday, whether you're planning a wedding, or whether you're planning a strategy. It's going to have changed. Maybe you're getting a new campus opening up somewhere that you need to suddenly account for. Maybe you've agreed a new officer structure in the middle of your strategic planning, or a new staff structure, or a new CEO's coming in, or maybe there was an alien invasion. And, that was probably a similar place in our risk register as a pandemic a few months ago, to be fair. So this way of doing it actually means that we can account for a lot of those bigger world things that might be going on, as well as the smaller intricacies on our own campuses. Now, if we go back to the vision, mission, values and behaviours and your personality, taking COVID specifically, I know some of my staff are a little bit worried this year. Well, what objectives am I going to set my staff? I don't know what's coming. I don't know what's happening. I haven't been alert this whole time. What do I do? And so, I've said to my staff, well, it's not necessary. Whilst I want you to plan objectives, and whilst we will have a strategic plan for this year, that isn't what is going to see you through this year. In terms of what's going on with COVID, it is your behaviours that are going to see you through this year. It is the way that we as an organisation react to this and how we behave to our students, how I behave to my staff. That is what will see us through this, not the intricate target setting that we're all really, really guilty of, because I can set my staff a load of targets now, and I probably still will, but they need the confidence to know that if everything just goes again, that's fine, because actually you'll more be measured on the way that you behave and interact and support each other. So our behavioural framework, which we're about to release, has support, empower and communicate as 3 behaviours from my staff. If myself and my staff team emulate those 3 really positive behaviours of support, empower and communication, the students will have a much better experience than if the staff were going out of their way to meet a really bizarre target that they just can't meet anymore because of COVID. As long as they're behaving in the right kind of way, students and the sabbatical officers will get that experience they deserve. So, we will have a strategic plan for 12 months in Kiel SU, but as I said, because of this situation, I don't want that to suddenly be a lot of pressure on the staff team as well. And I think what COVID has actually shown us is things change. Your crystal ball's broken, it fell off the table and it smashed everywhere. And us trying to plan things really long term, at the minute it just isn't happening. We are all really struggling to plan welcome at the moment, and that I won't tell you how many weeks it is because it'll terrify everyone. But how can we plan that, let alone something in 2 to 3 years? It's really, really hard to do that. And it shows that we need to be agile and we need to react quickly and not get really bogged down in, nope, I said I'm doing this, so I'm doing it, like the meme with the dog sat there saying this is fine and everything is on fire all around him. So we need to be agile and we need to make change happen quickly as well. And I think we've seen this a lot from our universities as well, how they've adapted and how we've adapted. Because how many people said we can't have paperless meetings? We just cannot. I must print out all of these 360 pages for all of my 18 people on the committee, and suddenly overnight we're all doing paperless meetings. So we can change quickly. It's very easy to get bogged down in that's how we've always done it. Matt Clutton, you need to add that onto your bingo as well. So Matt's one of our staff members and he knows exactly the kind of things that I'm going to say. And that's how we've always done it is something that I think COVID has just completely blown out of the water, which for me is brilliant because that's something that has always really bugged me, this has shown us that you can have paperless meetings, that you can work from home, that you can work flexibly, which is great. And actually, you'll probably find that if you've been doing it right, it's your values that have seen you through this, not your plan. Any of you have been picking up your current strategic plans, I mean, kudos to you, well done. But I don't think many of us have. But actually, what we've been doing probably is behaving in a certain kind of way to support our staff and our officer teams, to support students through the situation. So just then, as an excerpt from the draft strategic plan that I'm currently in the midst of writing, so the annual plan for Kiel, it's got COVID in it. And I think that's really good to be able to have that in, because that is what is happening at the minute. That is our world. It's not just our campus, our university, our city, or even our country. It is our world, isn't it? That is a COVID world right now. So us being able to have that in this first iteration of the strategic plan is really useful, because we can be very open and honest in this plan and say, it's not turned out how we wanted it to. We will continue. This is obviously just a few bullets out of it. It's not the full sentences, so please don't worry. But we'll continue. We promise we will continue to work closely with the university. We promise that we will listen to your concerns and feed them back. We promise we'll keep our buildings safe. We'll have measures in place for social distancing. We'll make sure that you're comfortable coming into the Students' Union, so we can actually have this really big world pandemic thing in our plan. Now, hopefully, everything crossed, it won't be in our plan in 12 months' time. And that's what I mean about that evolution. So if you were still going to write a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, you probably wouldn't put COVID in it, because you kind of hope that it wouldn't be a thing in 12 months' time. If you're doing it annually, great, it could come out. If it's still around, we can still continue to weave it in. But this is that thing where I was saying about those evolutionary changes every 12 months, rather than doing things in a really, really lengthy planning way. So students should be able to see as well that your plan is evolving around their needs, that we're actually being responsive to what they need. And it comes back to when you research with a student who's in first year, by the second year you're delivering the plan and they're in third year, their personal needs are very, very different than when you would have asked them. So this is, my final slide. I was aiming to get like this presentation more around the 25-minute, half hour, to give you enough time to ask any questions if you wanted to. I mean, obviously the first year will be the hardest of doing this, because you've got to get those vision, those values, your mission and your behavior stuff right. You might already have it in such a way where you think, actually, we did a big piece of research on this a couple of years ago and these are still completely relevant, and we want to keep them. And if you have, brilliant, you've already kind of done that first hard piece of work. Writing the first version obviously will be the hardest, which I'm finding at the moment, trying to juggle that and all the other things that are going on in the union and in life. So writing the first version will take you longer, but in theory the following years after that you're editing and adapting rather than starting from scratch every time. So where I said a while ago that sometimes you might think, oh my God, I've got to research every year and write a plan every year. Actually, it's just the research you need to do every year. The plan is there. It's now about tweaking it based on what students have said and putting your new sabbatical officer objectives into there. I think it gives you plenty of time for growth, creativity, change. And actually, I've started thinking even harder about this. You could, if you wanted to do a plan for a semester, if you were feeling really, really out there about it. And actually, the longer that we kind of do this, it may even get to the point where you think, do you know what, do we even need that traditional strategic plan element? Or is having a strong vision, strong value, strong behaviours framework, and then your departmental plans underneath it, is that okay if we are delivering what students need? It almost is a bit like, after a while, you might find that bit in the middle becomes defunct. Now, we are trying the annual plan thing here. I do think it will work, and I'm really excited about it. And I know I said about glitter and unicorns, but I love glitter and unicorns. So there's a really cool little unicorn for you, because why not? So I think I've managed to keep that to about the 25 minutes. I'm really happy to spend as little or as long as you want answering any questions. I'm happy. I've popped my Twitter handle if you wanted to tweet me, or if you wanted to get in touch via email, it's just s.ellis@keele.ac.uk. Nice and simple one for you there. So I can see there's a couple of questions there, so I'll just have a quick look at those. I don't know if everyone can see them, so I'll read them out as I'm answering, or trying to answer. So Laura Greenwood Parsons, how do you think the university will respond to this approach? They often have 5 to 10 year ones. Good question. So I've presented to this on our university a couple of times, which has been really nice. They've invited me to come and talk about it, and they've taken it really well, actually. And it's one of them. I think this is they kind of give me the lip service. And this is really good. We think this will be a brilliant idea. They can see how it works for Students' Union. I think it might take them longer if they decided to adapt and change in that kind of way that we have, but they were certainly very, very on board with the vision and the values aspect, and actually keeping that for a lot longer than what they normally do. And I think if you look, universities do tend to keep that a bit longer than we do as Students' Unions. I imagine I'd be interested now, after kind of the current situation has got better, to have that conversation with them again, because I think that this might actually now be forcing people down a certain route. So forcing people to really consider having those annual plans in there, rather than your 5 to 10 years. So yeah, so they received it well, but whether they put it into action, I don't know. But hopefully, after we've done this for a year or 2 years, and I've got even more evidence to say, look, this works, I'm hoping that there'll be a lot more buy-in on that. John has said, what do you do if some priorities generated from student research and sub-priorities could be argued aren't in your charitable objects? Because that's sometimes an issue that we face. Yes, it is. If it's not in our charitable objects to be able to do it, we just wouldn't be able to do it. And unfortunately, I'm happy to be corrected on this, so please do. But unfortunately, I just think we are a charity. We have to abide by charity law. We can't be in ultra vires. So if they want us to open Alton Towers Mark II on the back of a Keele car park, we'd have to say no, sorry. And I think it's a much easier conversation with your sabbatical officers, because you can actually get them in the room and have a debate over it. Students is much harder. But generally, something that wouldn't fit within our objects, we probably wouldn't do. So where are we now? So I can see one from Sarah. We do it, yay, Seth. So Sarah has said, we do an annual plan, and I'm convinced by it for the same reasons you are. But things like NUS quality mark for SUs express that we should have longer term strategic plans, and also some of our boards see an annual plan as a step on the way to a 5-year plan. So we're frequently seeing it treated like the lesser version of a classic strat plan. Have you seen that, and how have you responded to that challenge? I have seen that, and I've just kind of had to do the old, well, we're going to try it this way, because we've always been doing it that way and it's not worked. I think sometimes it is about having to have that confidence and ballsiness to stick your head above the parapet a little bit and sort of challenge back, say, that's wonderful, let me try it. If it doesn't work, okay, I'm willing to listen, but actually just let us have a go at this and kind of see how it goes, because it's quite obvious that the other way of doing it isn't achieving exactly what it should be achieving. I think with the NUS quality mark, I think it does say ideally 5 years, doesn't it? But what I would argue back with that is actually we have got a 5-year plan in terms of, well, not necessarily plan, but our vision, values, behaviours. That is more than 5 years. That sets the parameters, and we have to adapt our plans and change. So again, I'd probably challenge back personally on that one. Ken from Staffs, yay, nice neighbour Students' Union. How do you accommodate longer term strategic goals such as union building changes without losing sight of those? For something, because a lot of stuff does take more than a year to do. Personally, that's where I've said you tweak your plan every year, I'd keep that in every year. So that's not to say you delete the plan and restart it every year. So things for us that we want to do that we know will take several years to do would be in the strategic plan for several years. So when you're redoing year 2, you're still keeping that in there. And that's where I was saying, if you look at year 1 and year 2, it probably won't look very different. You might think actually 70% of this plan is the same. The important bit is the 30% of new stuff that you've been able to react and respond to and put in there, and the other 30% that's come out because either you've done it or it's just not relevant anymore. So that's how I'd respond to that one. That's helpful. An anonymous attendee. Have you found that this form of planning has improved morale? Staff often find a 5-year plan doesn't connect with their day-to-day. Yes, I have actually. So I mean, I can see there's 2 of my staff members on here, so if they want to put anything in the chat, feel free. But I found that this way of doing it, the staff have really bought into it a lot more than I've experienced previously, because they were so heavily involved in getting that vision and the values of the organisation right. They've actually really bought into it because they are that continuity. They'll probably be there more than 3 years, so they need to buy into that. And actually, by having an annual plan, they'll be feeding into that annual plan as well. So I think, say you've got a staff member who might start in year 3 of a 5-year strategy, quite hard to get them to buy into it. You can try and they'll probably say they bought into it, but have they? Whereas if you're doing it annually, it is a lot easier for them to feel ownership. And quite often you find that's where things can fall down. If there's no ownership of that plan by your staff, then how we deliver it to your students. Laura Ballard. Yeah, so Laura has been helping us out, and I can see that she says, and I'm dabbing unicorn. So who would you say you have received the greatest resistance from when delivering this form of planning? Honestly, I haven't received a lot of resistance on this way of planning. I think the most challenging questions probably were from the university, but they were challenging, and not in the sense of how will you align it with our plans, because their plans do tend to be that 3 to 5, and actually the response to that does tend to be more on what we've already said. Well, actually, similar to Ken's question, actually, we can still keep things in. We can still keep things in here for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years if it's relevant. But actually, we can also change. It kind of gives you the best of both worlds, really. So I think as I've been explaining it like that to people, there hasn't been a massive resistance on it, which I'm quite lucky. But once I've delivered it for a year or 2 years, I'm very happy to say, oh, I was wrong, but at least we tried it. But yeah, so hopefully that answers that. Are there any more questions anyone wants to ask at all? No? Okay. And just checking the chat just to see what's in there. Fab. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to the talk. I really, really appreciate it. I'm really happy to have conversations with any of you offline. Do get in touch. I'm going to pass back briefly to Jamie, just in case he needs to say anything at all. But thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful. I'm going to close the session now. Thanks, guys.